now time for the Soulful Psalms segment of Beacon of Truth. The Soulful Psalms is where we take one of the Psalms from the wisdom literature of the Old Testament, and which we hear in every holy sacrifice of the Mass, and we connect that Psalm to your everyday lived experience. You know, when Jesus talks about the law and the prophets and the writings, that's the Tanakh, the Torah, the Nebe'im, and the Ketuvim. So the writings, the Nebe'im, would have included the Psalms, right? So this was the hymnal of the Israelites, and is in a sense our hymnal, since we hear it at every mass, whether it's a weekday mass or Sunday mass, we always have the Psalms, right? And even the Liturgy of the Hours, we have. I mean, most of the Liturgy of the Hours is the Psalms. So very, very important book of the Bible as part of our foundation for our liturgical worship. And today we're going to take a look, we're going to finish looking at Psalm 137. All right, so obviously 137 is book 5 of the Psalms. Now, this is one of the Psalms. It's not an imprecatory Psalm like Psalm 58, 83, and 109 that are not included at all in the breviary. This is where part of the Psalm is not included because of it's called a quote-unquote cursing Psalm. And again, not foul language, but the idea that the language here is very strong, okay? Although this one's not bad, although the famous one is this last line, which we'll get to in a few minutes here. So Psalm 137, we already looked at the first 5 verses. We're going to pick up at verse 6 and work our way to the end of the Psalm, which is verse 9. So this is a Psalm that's reflecting back on the Babylonian exile. So this is when, probably during the reign of King Nebuchadnezzar, when he came in and took over the Israelites and enslaved them. And so this Psalm is a reflection of during that time, where it's kind of petitioning God to bring us back to our former glory. You know, God, don't forget us, because now we're abandoned here in this foreign land, and the sentiment of this Psalm definitely picks that up. I said, and so it started off, by the rivers of Babylon, there we sat and wept, remembering Zion. On the poplars that grew there, we hung up our harps. And he said, our oppressors asked us for songs. How can we sing the song of the Lord on alien soil? You know, so how could we sing with joy? How could we, praise when we're in this foreign land? You know, so now we pick up at verse 6. Oh, let my tongue cleave to my palate, if I remember you not. If I prize not Jerusalem as the first of my joys, right? So this is very interesting. So part of the reason why they were in exile, they were not faithful to God, right? Remember, the Israelites were the chosen people. They were the ones that were chosen by God to be his signs and witnesses, his example, his exemplars, his witnesses to the power of his love and to his truth to all the pagan nations around them, right? So the pagan nations were supposed to see Israel and say, whoa, look, we have our pagan gods, but wait a minute, look what the God of Israel is doing. Look how he's working with his people, and hopefully bring them into the relationship with the real God, not the false pagan gods that they have, but to help bring them into a relationship with the living God, right? The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And when the people did not do that, the natural consequences is, God said, well, if you don't want to follow me and follow my laws and follow my teachings, and you want to be like everybody else around you, okay, well, you don't want me to rule over you, then Babylon will. And so he allowed King Nebuchadnezzar and the Amorites and the Azadites, all the other ones that oppressed Israel, that those things happened because Israel was not faithful to God. And the natural consequence is, well, God will just let the course of their decision, right, their free will decision, has ramifications, right? It has effects in their lives, and these are some of the effects, slavery. And so now they're saying, oh, let my tongue cleave to my. Now they're like, oh, we're remembering Jerusalem as the first of my joys. Well, why couldn't they remember that while they were sinning? Right? Because that happens to us, right? We forget about God for a while. We're so wrapped up in our stuff, so wrapped up in what's going on around us that sometimes we forget about God for a little bit, and we turn our backs on God. And when that happens, sometimes the natural consequence of our turning our back on God is that God doesn't turn away from us, but he allows the natural consequence of our turning away from him to happen, which sometimes, may lead to some behaviors or decisions that are damaging to us. But see, God allows that in his permissive will, allows that to happen. Why? Because we need to learn something from that experience. We can grow from that experience, right? Because life is not without temptations. We talk about Saint Charbel today. Even Saint Charbel was, in fact, I saw a movie about his life on EWTN television. They aired a story about Saint Charbel, and it talked about how he faced a temptation of women, because he was evidently an attractive man when he was younger, when he first wanted to become a monk, and some of the women there saw him as someone that could be a great husband and father for them. So there were some temptations there with women, which Saint Charbel prayed and fought against. It was again depicted in the movie by EWTN. So now Israel here in this psalm is remembering what happened in the past, and then he continued. Remember, O Lord, against the children of Edom, the day of Jerusalem, when they said, tear it down to its foundations. Right. So now we're getting to the imprecatory part of the psalm here. So now they're saying when they came in and invaded us, they said, tear it down, destroy Jerusalem, tear it down to its foundations. And so that's what happens sometimes in the secular culture with moral relativism and subjective individualism. They want to tear down the foundations that we tried to lay in their lives. Remember, God builds the house of our children's lives with and for them. Our job as parents, as teachers, as clergy, as educators, as catechists, is to help lay a foundation in the life of our children so they can build the house of their life with God, right? But sometimes the culture tries to tear away at those foundations, so in order to separate us from God, right? And sometimes we fall for the lie, the pleasure of the sin feels good, or we're attracted to, our hearts want the truth, but we're attracted to the false truth of the culture. So it says, so they're remembering here, tear it down. Remember when they said, tear it down, when they were tearing down the foundations of our relationship with you, O Lord. And now we get to the part that's not included in the breviary. Okay. These two verses are left out. And so this is kind of like the end of the psalm. It says, "Oh, daughter Babylon, destroyer, blessed whoever repays you the payment you paid to us. Blessed who," and then now we see a parallelism here. Blessed whoever grasps and shatters your children on the rock. Okay, let's take a look at this. Now, what is not being said here is that, remember, eye for an eye. They're not saying we're going to do this to your children. What they're saying is that this is what you did to us, and so may you receive the repayment in the same way that you paid to us. So blessed whoever grasps and shatters your children on the rock. So you just, when you came in and invaded, you destroyed our family. You killed our children. You killed the ones that we love. You eroded the foundation of our relationship with the Lord. And so they said, blessed whoever does the same thing to you that you did to us. Right? Yes, there's strong language here, right? But the idea is not necessarily actually killing innocent children. That's not the idea. The idea here is an eye for an eye. May someone do to you, Babylon, what you did to us. Now remember, Jesus came in and healed all of this, right? No longer an eye for an eye. Jesus says, turn the other cheek, right? If someone takes your cloak, give them your tunic as well, that whole thing, right? So, but that's the imprecatory nature of this psalm.
For more on the Psalms with Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers, check out Beacon of Truth weekdays at 4 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio and streaming everywhere you listen to podcasts.